I can't breathe. The words squeezed from the dying breaths of George Floyd as he pleaded with the white police officer whose knee was slowly throttling the life out of him. I can't breathe. The police officer knew he was being filmed for 9 minutes, but that did not stop him. What kind of culture is at the heart of the American state? They thought it didn't matter if they were being filmed because nothing would change. Nothing would change. Just another black life gone. I can't breathe. And they were right, weren't they? It didn't change when those were the last words of Eric Garner, too, in a police chokehold in New York in 2014. It didn't change after the death of Trayvon Martin in 2012, or when 7-year-old Aiyana Stanley Jones was shot in her sleep by police officers executing a no-knock warrant in 2010. I can't breathe. But this isn't only about America. We are not only protesting in solidarity against the racism in America, we are protesting what happens here. I can't breathe were the last words of Jimmy Mumenga, forcibly deported from Britain in 2010. You know, none of us can have experienced the pain and fear and desperation of having our lives choked out of us. But some of us have experienced the bitter taste of racism, and all of us will have seen it walked by as an insult is hurled, or the disproportionate arrests of Black people in this country and this region, the disproportionate deaths of Black people in this pandemic, the ghettoization of Black and minority ethnic people to certain streets, certain jobs, the race pay gap, the lack of Black voices on our TV screens or in our corridors of power. I grew up in Newcastle in the 70s and 80s, a city with many warm, supportive people, but also with racist abuse, physical and verbal, and a lack of any role models. Martin Luther King visited Newcastle when I was 2. I never learned about that. Frederick Douglass, the American campaigner and abolitionist, lectured in Newcastle in the 1840s. I didn't know about that. And it's sad to think, as a consequence, we may have had a higher proportion of BAME lecturers then than we do now. So this is just one reason why the terrible death of George Floyd touched so many of us. Because of its inhumanity, but because we have been waiting for generations now for the promises of justice and equality to be realized, and we are tired of waiting. Now, we have to prove the killers of George Floyd wrong and make this not just a moment of protest, but a revolution against racism. We are angry. And I understand those demonstrating outside right now, despite the lockdown. I was really glad when we moved this protest online, because I don't want to risk the Black lives this movement is about and who are more susceptible to die from COVID-19. But when I hear Priti Patel urging protesters to stay at home to protect themselves, it almost makes me want to take to the streets. If Patel wants to protect Black lives, she can start by getting rid of the no recourse to public funds rule, which is causing starvation in Newcastle today. I campaigned against anti-apartheid for decades, and I was on the national executive of the anti-apartheid movement, and I think that was the most successful mass movement in history. I loved our demonstrations. We had all the best music, Free Nelson Mandela, Nkosi Sikelel, Africa. Hundreds of thousands danced to those tunes. But why that mass movement worked was not simply because we protested in huge numbers, but because we made organizations, companies, countries, politicians change. We boycotted, we voted, we made apartheid South Africa a pariah state. We have to do the same thing for racism. Make it unacceptable. Don't buy its product. Don't vote for its advocates. Don't fund its perpetrators. So the British government says, it doesn't know what the tear gas and rubber bullets we export to the US are used for. Do we accept that? No. So police forces say they don't know why Black people are being arrested disproportionately. Do we accept that? No. So businesses say they would love to hire Black people, they just can't find any talented ones. Do we buy their products? No. We are sick of the excuses. Broadcasters saying it's just that the best stories are written by white people. Local authorities saying they don't understand why there are not more black councillors. Schools that just happen to always exclude black boys. Politicians who just happen to always marginalize and make poorer BAME people. We need to change. We need to organize. We need to stand up. We need to make it happen. In Newcastle, in the UK, across the world, we cannot let George Floyd's death be just another black life gone. We have to prove his killers wrong. Thank you.